This week, Corin Imai, from a senior security advisor, sorry, my teleprompter never works correctly, at DomainTools. She's here for an interview. Coming up after that, a technical segment from Eyal Nemani. He's the cybersecurity researcher, or one of them anyway, at Javelin Networks. In the security news, Cisco accidentally released a dirty cow, Apache Struts vulnerabilities, more of them, zero-day exploits for VM escapes, spam spewing IoT botnets, and these vibrating apps turn your phone into a sex toy. We'll somehow put a security spin on that last story, I promise. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network. DomainTools helps security analysts turn threat data into threat intelligence. They take indicators from your network, including domains and IP addresses, and connect them with nearly every active domain on the internet. Those connections drive risk assessments, help profile attackers, guide online fraud investigations, and map cyber activity to attacker infrastructure. Fortune 1000 companies, global government agencies, and leading security solutions vendors use the DomainTools platform as a critical ingredient in their threat investigations and proactive defenses. For more information, visit securityweekly.com/DomainTools.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a man whose no-shave November is going well. Paul Asadorian!
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Hey, not fair. You started last November.
December. Get it right.
December. There you go. This is episode 582. It is, in fact, November 8th, 2018. Larry and I are in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island at a new old table.
Yeah, it's new but old.
We haven't done it from like a table like this in a while.
I know.
We've been kind of freeform in the studio for some time.
Yes.
And now we're bringing the table back. And I like the table. I have to say.
Well, this table holds a lot of memories for you.
It does. Well, it's my old dining room table. I don't know if there's that many memories. We really didn't use it that much.
Not even for the Thanksgiving incident?
No, that was at a different house.
Okay.
It's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the Thanksgiving incident.
Yeah.
And that's enough about that.
For which we shall not discuss.
That's right. Oh, wait. I needed that. Hold on. I'm a hot mess tonight. And now
tonight?
my cigar.
It is too far. Roll under the chair. You can't reach it.
Larry, read some announcements. Yeah. Can you see the teleprompter?
I can't see the teleprompter.
Tell them about InfoSec World.
It's a really cool place to be. I have yet to go, but it's one of those conferences that I'd really enjoy going to. But I hear there's lots of great talks coming up for InfoSec World. And I know a bunch of folks that are really excited about going.
April 1st through the 3rd next year. Excellent. There is a discount code OS19. Hold on. I'm a hot mess tonight. OS19-Sec Week. I'll get it right. Nice. I'll get it right. I'll get my stuff together, I promise.
Nice. Speaking of which, did you do that thing with the stuff that I sent you?
The thing with the stuff? I don't know.
For InfoSec World?
Oh, I did the thing with the stuff,
awesome.
Yes. And now our audience is really mad because we've talked about two things that's inside baseball to start the show. How about we introduce our guests, because they probably want to hear her talk and not me and Larry talk about things that we are not fully going into the details on the show. So
maybe you want to introduce the other hosts that are just idling by here.
Speaking of hot mess.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Mr. Jeff Mann is on the lines. Jeff, welcome.
Hey, great to be back on the air and seeing you guys virtually.
Yes.
Paul, you almost don't need to wear pants now that you got the table back.
That's right. We can go back to no pants podcast. Well, almost, I guess.
Yeah, they just have to tighten that camera up a little bit.
Tablecloth.
Tablecloth. Yep, we'll be good. Joff Thayer is on the lines from an undisclosed location.
Well, g'day, Paul. Yes, I am coming to you from an undisclosed, very sunny California location. Slightly disclosed. With that intro, I was thinking, what are we going to start calling cash cow tipping? Maybe sacred vibrating Cisco cash cow tipping?
Right?
Wow.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Alrighty. So Corin is here with us. She began her career working on desktop virtualization, networking, and cloud computing technologies before delving into security, and is currently the senior security advisor for DomainTools. Corin, welcome.
Hey guys, nice to be here.
Yes, nice to have you, Corin, on the show. We've, in fact, our paths have crossed several times in the past. And now you found a happy home at DomainTools, which we're very happy about, as we love DomainTools.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a couple years since we've known each other, and so being at DomainTools has been awesome.
That's great. And I had notes on our interview, but I think we wanted to talk about phishing attacks and investigate. Just go. I'm a hot mess tonight, and that's not going to change. So, Corin, we were talking about topics surrounding phishing detection, prevention. In how those segue into domain investigation. So maybe you'd like to kind of kick us off and set the stage.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that when we were discussing this a little bit earlier last week is that we talked about kind of the tactics that we're seeing evolve in the industry, as well as kind of some preventative measures that we help companies with. And so I think some of the things that we're seeing evolve is that some of the lines of communication are breaking down in terms of communication between security teams and those that might be receiving the phishing emails or through other vectors. And so that's kind of something that we're seeing evolving. I don't know if you guys have heard kind of what's evolving on your side.
It seems that phishing attacks are still the primary way in which attackers and pen testers pretty much gain a foothold in the environment.
Yes.
That's been pretty consistent for some time. I'm hoping we can change that, but I don't know. Larry, Joff,
it's 25 years and counting, so good luck.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to when Jeff was pen testing as well.
Yeah, and I think, Kaspersky came out with some interesting stats this week around that and what Q3 kind of looks like from their standpoint in terms of phishing attacks, and, it just continues to grow. And I think, as we delve more into social tools and those types of things, social engineering allows us to do spear phishing attacks, which means, we're more vulnerable. How often do we really take a deep dive into all the links that are in our emails? So, yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's going to continue to grow.
Hey, just to be clear, Paul, when I used to do phishing, it was snail mail, so it took a lot longer.
Right.
You had to wait for them to receive the mail and that actually type in the URLs into their browser, but it still was equally effective.
Right, after they got out of their horse and buggy to deliver.
I was going to say, was it like a pony, like a literal Pony Express? Is that?
That's right.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
You can't spoof those URLs.
Right?
No. Your domain foo had to be strong.
So Larry, what's happening in your world in terms of phishing? Still effective?
Absolutely. Then that was my task last week was a phishing engagement, and yeah, absolutely, it's one of the leading ways in which attackers are getting their stuff in an organization. We're doing really good at perimeter defense. We're doing really good at desktop. We're starting to do a better job at app. The one way into is exploiting the human by triggering a call to action with getting you to help and setting a deadline for that to happen, or you're going to be restricted in how you can perform your job. Like, oh shit, I'm going to get fired if I don't do this.
Right.
So, yes, absolutely.
Not to give too much of your secrets away, but are you spinning up new domains?
Oh yeah.
For every engagement?
Not every engagement. Some domains we have are very broad and can work for multiple.
Interesting. Yeah. Because my technique was just going to be to see how the age of the domain, which I know is one of the factors that the domain tools can collect and easily display for you.
Absolutely.
And if the engagement started and it's a couple days old,
This was exactly the recommendation to the customer that we had in this last engagement. I finished the report this morning and was absolutely it. In that I had only spun up the domain 3 days before the phishing emails went out, and that's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem. Well, one, it was a misspelling on their name, so I kind of concerned that they already didn't own it, and so Absolutely. Domain reputation is hugely important.
Right.
And that's one of those things that we try to avoid, is that we know if we're going to be doing engagements with customers or multiple year, those multi-year ones become more valuable as time goes on.
Yes.
And even some of the more generic type of fishes that we use that are highly successful, we've owned those domain names for years.
Yeah, slap an SSL cert on there and
You're good to go.
you're good to go. But you said something that was interesting, in the new domain was basically a typo squatted domain from the customer. Corinne, I think that tees up a DomainTools actually product. I mean, not to give a product pitch, but I mean, you have a solution for people to deal with that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a tool called Fisheye, and so what we can do is we can plug in a key term. So whether that's your brand name or any associated kind of domain names that you have that you would like to monitor, you can monitor them, and they'll flag them to you at the time of inception, which is pretty awesome, so that you can find those typo squatting differences. And we look at a number of different types of characters that can be, manipulated in order to spoof that domain.
Joff, you okay? Was that Joff?
I had a momentary dropout there, and I was like, Corinne just froze, or maybe I did.
It was you. Oh. It was you.
Okay. My customer's network is really, really excellent in my undisclosed location, so I'm surprised.
That's awesome. That you're slowly disclosing where you are, Joff.
Crap.
We just keep getting little pieces.
Tell us more.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So more back to the phishing from fraud protection. Corinne, what are some of the stories or customer stories around the anti-phishing aspect of what DomainTools provides for its customers?
Yeah, I think that what we're looking at, our customers are approaching from looking at domains that might be registered with any of the key characteristics, like I mentioned it before. So they're monitoring them in Fisheye, and then they're also taking that and pivoting into Iris, where they can, and Iris is one of our other tools, and they can, within Iris, find out all of this data and connected infrastructure that might then allow them to understand where either it's coming from, or if it's, we do assign like a risk score to it, which is pretty cool. So you can see of that risk score how it might affect your network, and then you can start to play around there.
And can I feed that directly into something? So if Larry's coming to do a pen test, can I just feed that in and just automatically block those domains to make Larry's life difficult?
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest automatically blocking them. I would, suggest some investigation. But we do have specific lists or, scoring that we would recommend you start blocking. But you could make Larry's life very difficult.
Well, I was going to ask a more basic question, if I may, Paul.
Sure.
How does it work?
In what sense?
In the sense of I'm a customer, and I'm just a Joe employee at a customer site, and DomainTools are running. So is the expectation that the phishing email never makes it to me? The phishing email comes, but the offending link has been stripped out. Is it transparent to me as a user? I guess is my question.
You as a user, no. So I think we could probably take a step back and say that our data is being fed into other systems to notify or, I guess, enact some sort of change. But it's not that our system actually shuts down access or our system does any of the pieces to block.
It's more of an investigation tool. Well, at least the Iris tool that I'm familiar with and using is an investigation tool by an analyst, correct, Corinne?
Correct. Yeah, we do see some people feeding it into SIMs in order to run a comparison of log data.
Yeah, and I think a great example of that, Jeff, is one thing we've talked about in previous interviews and segments with DomainTools is that when Corinne talked about the pivoting, sometimes they have to work to uncover the actual domain that it was going after in the phishing email. I mean, it's the email domain is one thing, but you have a link that might be obfuscated in some way, and then there's JavaScript, and so you do that investigation. We did an awesome webcast where we covered that. But if you take that end kind of domain, right, then you can pivot off it. And what I really like about Iris is that kind of glimpse into the future. So you tie those pieces together. And I'm curious, I don't know, this would be interesting to do as a test with like a pen tester like Larry, right? Basically, I can look at, well, and it might be different for you, but attackers typically don't obfuscate the registration information. So if you come to me at attacker.com, I can look at who owns that domain and other characteristics and then say, well, what other domains have that same registration value, phone number, email address, whatever, and go, well, those are obviously associated with, as Corinne said, a high risk score domain. So let me just take all of those domains, even though I haven't seen them yet, and I'm just going to block all of them.
Right.
Did I get that right, Corinne?
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a question.
Yeah, we.
Oh, go ahead. Please finish your response.
No, go for it.
Okay. Well, my question is this: as a pen tester, and I'm pretty sure Larry has this kind of process as well. If I go after recently expired domains or domains that are just about to expire, and they previously have a really good reputation, right? They're used, they're like well used, quite old, established, and I pick it up as a pen tester and weaponize it. Can DomainTools actually look at that change in ownership? Does DomainTools have some sort of proprietary algorithmic approach to this change of ownership problem of recently expired tools, and able to actually increase the risk score based on that?
Absolutely. So we take a look at indicators of switching in terms of who's registered that domain, if it's actually coming to expiration. We take a look at ownership, all of those things that kind of come into play, and then we'll assign most likely a higher risk score to notify whoever's watching or monitoring that domain.
Also, actually, I did an investigation that talked about what Joff was talking about. It's actually, I think it was a domain that someone like took control over, like in a malicious way, and then when ownership changes, other indicators, Joff, change that you can track. In a lot of, but Iris lets you just do that, like with clicks in the interface, so I can see when the domain changed, it flipped over to new DNS servers to host that domain. Then I can look at, well, what other domains are hosted by those DNS servers, and also the IP address changes, right? Or there could be a series of changes. And the one I was tracking, there was like a series of changes because they took over the domain, and then I think they wanted to use it for a campaign, so they changed the IP address again and changed where it was hosted, so it gets a new IP address, right? So then you pivot off that IP address, what else is hosted on that IP address, and then you can look at the registration for those domains and somehow even tie it back without the registration information, or either with the registration information or those other indicators, which is really cool. I mean, I've used it in a couple of, like, I just got curious because it was an obvious phishing kind of email, and I go in and I'm like, since I have access to the product, thanks to our fine friends at DomainTools, I can conduct my own investigation. I'm like, this is just really cool. Like, I would use this quite often in my I don't think you use it too much. I mean, there are operational use cases, but it's more for the analyst to be able to investigate domains and IP addresses and tie things together. I found it super useful for that purpose.
See, I can see it on the converse, is that being able to check my own reputational score and view my activity and where it's tied for all of my phishing domains from the offensive side.
Yeah. There's a couple of other.
Just trying to sell it more. I just find I'm not trying to sell it. I just see the value in being able to use that from the counter perspective.
I mean, I will say, Corinne, working with DomainTools for a while, it is very much more focused on the enterprise. Although I like the other kinds of use cases, like we just kind of like nerd out on the tool, and I like Larry's thing of like, I've got domains as a pen tester I use for phishing. I want to make sure their reputation, or at least know what their reputation is,
right?
So I can use that information in my phishing attack. Also, I've wondered from the customer side, from the outside looking in, if I take and I've done this as well with Irish, you take their IP addresses or domains, you go find the subdomains. And Corinne, you've got there's a special way that it's finding we have ways as pen testers, right, to find subdomains, but in the DomainTools product, there's a specific data, like it's all passive data, right?
Yes, yeah, we have passive DNS built in.
That's awesome. Yeah, so it's sensors constantly sniffing, looking for any requests to those subdomains, and then populating the database that you can then query, which is really cool. Nice.
So as pen testers, then. If we want to farm ourselves some domains that remain with a nice reputation, I mean, something that's occurred to us, and I'm pretty sure it's occurred to Larry too, And that is, we could, host some domains and keep them very static for some period of time, pointing at some very generic financial web page or something like that, and try to slowly grow their reputation as being authoritative and nice and friendly on the internet, and then turn them into phishing domains, maybe a couple, 3 years down the road. I'm not sure that DomainTools or any other tool could probably handle that situation, but I'm curious to your response on that.
Yeah, it would depend on what you're changing. So if you're changing, we take snapshots of the actual page, so that if that changes over time, we could actually look at that. We could look at any behavioral changes. So if you start to use it more frequently, we would take that into consideration. It just depends in which way you want, or you're actually weaponizing it.
Yeah, that's a really specific use case with job. For pen testers, I can see that attackers, as I've found in working with DomainTools, typically don't go through anywhere near close to those steps. Right? But if you do essentially park a domain, right, and it will, I think, generate a probably pretty low,
I would argue,
risk score on the reputation side. However, it also depends on what other metadata is there about that domain. If you used completely unique registration information, completely unique DNS servers that really aren't tied to you or anything else nefarious at all, then you probably got a pretty good chance of getting a good reputation score and using that as a phishing email and being very successful. But that's for an attacker, that's a lot of work. That's a targeted attacker or a pen tester that might go through that.
Yeah, it's not likely to. You're right. That's a very specific use case. And it's not likely that somebody's going to do that. Even pen testers may not take the trouble to go through that kind of long process of parking and sort of making a domain very static for a period of time, so it develops a nice low risk score.
We see weaponization happen much faster.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Very cool.
And then you could get flagged as well the first time you use it, and then you're basically it's not a good return on investment, right? If the first time you use it, the customer is using some kind of domain reputation feed, right? That could be DomainTools, or they're populating some other feed, and DomainTools takes multiple feeds back in. So basically, Larry does a pen test of me. I see that domain come through. It comes through, and I look at it, and I look under the covers and review all the code and go, that's a phishing attempt. And then I report back that domain had sent me a phishing email. That's going to factor into multiple threat feeds, potentially, and then the next time you use it, Joff, it's gonna flag.
And that's a great opportunity, and having stock in multiple domains that are some are quote long con, and some of them will get burned.
Yeah.
And they get burned for a certain subset of customers.
Oh, interesting.
Because not all of them have the same level of due diligence.
Right.
In that you can still use the burned ones for those that their security program is not nearly as robust, because they don't have any ability to do any of that categorization, or they don't have it turned on, or they haven't found it useful. So that tends to help some of those types of things.
Yeah.
So you can having those quote burned domains is still valuable, because that some of them aren't using a product like DomainTools stuff to even do any reputational score.
Right.
Which is disappointing.
Yeah, it is. So we talked about a little bit about the fraud product. Can you expand on some of the functionality there? So I put my brand or my domain. Does that regularly send me alerts, Corinne?
Yeah, so you can set the cadence of those alerts. So right now I monitor, I'd say 5 key corporate businesses, and then they send me alerts every day and tell me which of those have been blacklisted, so a risk score of 100, and then which of those, and what their score is. So I can see those in an email, or I can actually enter the fisheye interface, and then from there I can pivot into Iris and feed all of that data there and see it all within Iris and connect all of the infrastructure.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting, because when I've done some domain investigations, when typically in that case, if someone's trying to typo squat my domain, and let's say, just as an example, I work for a university, and then I pivot into Iris and start doing that investigation and see that whoever's typo squatting that particular domain that's associated with maybe a educational institution has also registered several other domains that are typo squatting the same industry. Then I can take that data, go back to the ISAC for that particular industry and go, hey, look what I found. And then now everyone's got a nice indicator. So that's actually really cool. And it's typically, I mean, in investigations I've done, that's happened for sure.
Definitely.
And that's not just phishing either. That's, brand protection, right? Like luxury brands, I would say, Corinne, typically have that issue.
Yeah, I would say enterprise customers normally have that issue. I mean, I just ran Security Weekly in there, and I can pull up creation date, registrant email, the proximity to possible malicious behavior, all of that stuff. But it doesn't look like you guys have as much to worry about.
Actually, that's a great point if you're pen testing too. Yeah. You don't want to use anything that's linked to or tied to your corporate for your pen test business in pen testing, right? You got to keep all the, I would say registration and everything has to be totally separate.
Yep.
Because you don't want your website that people actually want to go to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be bad.
That'd be bad.
Absolutely.
It'd be interesting to see the other domain, how that ended up, and what the reputation score of that other domain is.
Now everyone's curious what now every pen tester listening, Corinne, is going to send you an email and go, "Hey, can you check my domain? I really want to know." That's really fun.
I'm happy to test it. Yeah, DM me on Twitter, and I'll run it through our system.
Careful what you ask for.
It'd be interesting to see what the .com address.
Yeah. I have done that investigation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk after the show.
Yeah. It was like one of the first times I ever used Iris a long time ago, so I should probably go do that again.
You should. It'd be interesting to see what that's all about.
Yep. That's a big investigation, actually. I was surprised, actually, in some investigations I've done, like
how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah, and if you did it for Larry, you'd probably find 1,000 domains. But sometimes that scales out to like 10,000 domains.
Yep.
And that's why you need some kind of analytics interface to weed through it. Because if you got to do those investigations manually, it's not happening when you're looking at 10,000 domains, for sure. Awesome. Corinne, any other news from DomainTools or products, features, anything I forgot to talk about?
No, I don't think so. We have some really cool stuff coming up in 2019. So I know that our product teams are really excited about where we're heading in terms of how our products are being built and how they're going to be able to help in more than just the current capacity.
That's awesome. Can't wait to hear more. Again, if you're interested in any of the tools that we talked about, as I said, DomainTools has been a sponsor for a long time now, and you should check out DomainTools.com. Go there. I've primarily used Iris. I haven't done too much with the fisheye product. Is that what you called it? I said that right? Okay.
Yep.
I've primarily done Iris, and I really like it for the investigations that I've tested. I think it's very useful. So awesome. Corinne, thank you so much for appearing on Paul's Security Weekly.
Thank you guys so much. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks, Corinne.
And with that, we'll take a short break, come back with yet another technical segment from the fine folks at Javelin Networks. Stay tuned.